Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of 10 for the Chairman. For those that you haven't watched this before, this is where I take 10 questions from the community, more specifically the subscribers who generously contribute money every month to allow us to do enhanced community content. So this show, Around the Verse, Meet the Devs, sort of behind the scenes at CIG video pieces, the Jump Point magazine we do, which is 50 to 70 pages a month. With pretty in-depth behind the scenes of how we built a certain ship or worked on a level or some of the game mechanics we worked on and sort of other community content and background stuff that we do. So even some of our live event kind of stuff, we sell tickets for the live events, but that only covers actually a portion of some of what we spend on sort of the community ability, putting together things for sort of our town halls so everyone can ask questions. And so a lot of the organizational work of that is done by our amazing community team that is built to interact and help facilitate interaction with you guys out there, with everybody actually developing the game on coding, doing the art, designing levels and stuff. So thank you guys for enabling us to really sort of push the interaction, the day-to-day interaction with you guys. I gave a speech at DICE about a week or so ago about this, where I sort of made an impassioned plea in a very short 20 minutes, which is unusual for me, to the industry, saying that if you focus on your community and embracing them, there's a lot more you get from your community rather than yes, okay, you're letting us make the game, which is completely awesome and thank you so much for, but also just the ideas, the interaction, the feedback, all that just makes a better game. And so it's a great way to develop a game. We're having the time of our life. I'm having the time of life making this game. So thank you all for that. And back to the original thing, thank you for the subscribers for helping a certain aspect of that happen every week, one of which is this show, which is 10 for the Chairman, where I take 10 questions asked by subscribers and answer them to the best of my ability. So having said that, let's get to the first question, which is Zadum, who says, you mentioned the reputation is tied to the owner, not the pilot. We know an organization can own ships. Can a player use the org-owned ships to do dirty deeds? And as long as the players aren't identified, hidden org members in brackets, will their personal reputations not take a hit? So definitely the owner of the ship is going to be the one that would take the biggest hit on reputation if you sort of do bad things like attack another ship. In so much as the details of the implementation of that, like is there a way that some of that rolls off to people that are identified on the ships? We haven't fully fleshed that out. I mean, we're obviously going to try and make it so it can't be abused, but it would be sort of realistic. So if you're running around in a certain organization's ship and plundering the trade lanes with it, then definitely that organization is going to take some heat for it. And then potentially there may be some blowback on individuals that would be flying on it. But the actual exact rules of how much the individual versus how much the sort of organization will be exposed is that hasn't been sort of defined and probably would be sort of fleshed out in our sort of alpha stage on the persistent universe, which we're going to be rolling out the earliest part of that by the end of this year for you guys. All right, next question comes from Dark Owners, who asks, if I loan out my ships to a friend from my organization, will they be able to switch out the weapons and other components for their own items on their account? Yes, I think they actually would be able to switch them out. It does bring up a good question, because I don't think we've really thought about, well, okay, what happens if I lend you my ship and you switch out some of the items on it for items you own? What happens to my items? Well, so I would assume that what would happen if we did that, my items would basically stay where the weapons were shipped at, were basically switched out, and then when you give it back to your friend, then the items would get put back on it and you get back to the ship the way it was sent to you. I would assume that's kind of how we would implement it, but that aspect of the lending the ship and what you do with the components hasn't been fully fleshed out on the rule set yet, and that would be something we would obviously have to figure out the details for. Okay, next question comes from Kay Cravener, who asks, will persistent universe missions such as attacking a pirate outpost scale to the number of players who accept this mission? If so, will the scale also take into consideration others who happen to be in the area during the attack? Well, it sort of depends on the kind of mission that you're going to be accepting. So We definitely are going to have some scaling in the sort of dynamic missions that we have that will be based on several factors. One, which would be based on your skill level and a few other factors, including the number of people in your group. So if you're flying around with 3 or 4 of your friends and you accept a mission to go after some pirates, potentially an engagement with the pirates, there may be more pirates in that engagement encounter than would be if it was just a solo mission that you're expecting. So there's some amount of scaling. Some wouldn't necessarily scale, so we may have some encounters that are just big encounters and you'll have to get a group together to win. Some will be sort of small encounters which will really be simple to do and won't pay much, and so you do it by yourself, obviously you get all the payment. If you do it with a few friends, you'll split it. It'll be easy, but you'll split it. So the functionality is there, and it is part of the whole sort of dynamic mission design. It's just it will be sort of on a case-by-case basis depending on sort of the template and the encounter and kind of what we think is appropriate. Okay, next question comes from Shrike, who asks, if I'm a law-abiding UEE citizen and stumble across a shipwreck in space, should I have any reservations about salvaging the wreck and selling anything that I'm able to obtain from a legal perspective? No, I mean, I think in general, if you come across a wreck in space, especially depending on the situation, because there'll definitely be cases where we'll sort of, there'll be two kinds. There'll be the sort of a player's being attacked and you happen to be in that instant area and they'll have their wreck and perhaps you could salvage some stuff from there, and there potentially could be some sort of timer or timeout thing on that, because you don't want people abusing it where someone attacks someone and then someone that's their friend and says, oh, I just found this, I found all this cargo floating in space. But after a certain period of time, then it sort of be like it's open for salvage, and there definitely will also be wreck ships that will be spawned as potential encounters that you can salvage from, and that will be perfectly fine to salvage. So we'll have to handle it. We'll handle it with some level of sort of wreckage left over from encounters that are simulated on the universe simulation that happens on our big universe server, and that will sort of spawn ships that are sitting there that perhaps will have goods and items that you can salvage, and you'll be fine in doing that. And then there'll be some salvage that will be available because of player versus player combat or even player versus AI combat that you come across. And those will be sort of generally will be okay to do, but there'll be some level of guard against people sort of abusing the system by pretending not to know the guy that attacked them and legally obtaining the goods. I hope that answers the question. Okay, next question comes from Slads, who asks, in regards to the persistent universe instances, if I were stalking someone over multiple solar systems, how are we ensured that we will be instanced with that person every time? Okay, well, so in that particular case, this is the whole idea of the person of interest denoche. So like when you're tracking someone and you can mark someone through your Mobiglass, you note them as a person of interest. So there's different categories. There's a person of interest, there's your friends, there's your enemies, and your friends and enemies are sort of dependent on like organizations, who your friends list is, who the enemies of your friends, who the enemies of your organizations are. But a person of interest is the way the game will track someone you're interested in. So that's part of the matchmaking criteria. When it's putting you into an area or an instance, it looks around and looks at who's there and goes, oh, well, this person's a person of interest for Chris. So, okay, I will want to put Chris into this instance. And that's how you sort of get to keep with them and track them as they move across instance to instance and go against star systems. That carries down also onto the planets as well as into space. And there was kind of a write-up of that in sort of the whole sort of multiplayer and instancing post that I wrote quite a long time ago at the beginning of the campaign. But that's still the fundamental design. We think it will work pretty well. We're still obviously working out some of the sort of balancing on the instance side and how many people we can get into one instance, and so how many slots we'd reserve for friends, enemies, people of interest. But I think the design is pretty solid, so I think it'll work well. Okay, next question comes from Raging Simeon, who asks, will large ships like the Javelin, Bengal, or even bigger behave similar to the space stations and exist in all instances at once, or will they get matched into a single instances somehow? Well, it sort of depends, but the very biggest ones that you can fight over and take over potentially will be sort of persistent and therefore will not be instanced in multiple dimensions, essentially, which is kind of what happens when you instance. So like if you own a Bengal, it can only exist in one instance. Now, so it can't have like a version of that Bengal across 4 different instances with 4 different groups of people attacking all at once. It'll only be one instance where the Bengal's in. And there will probably be some kind of fictional rules that handle people sort of arriving at that ship and being able to fight over it in the same way that we're going to do for space stations and asteroid bases. So it'll be similar to space stations, but like I said, space stations don't exist in all instances. Space stations just exist in one instance, but that instance can't be sort of copied. So you can't have so the difference is like if you're in an orbit around Earth or something, in Earth you can, we potentially will have thousands of people in orbit around Earth, transition down to Earth, leaving Earth to go out to space. Well, we obviously can't have thousands of people in one instance. So in that particular case, say if we had 100 people per instance that we could manage, which we're nowhere close to right now, but we are working on being able to have a lot more people in the instance. And we had 1,000 players, there would be 10 instances of sort of like the space around Earth. And maybe they won't necessarily all be in exactly the same location. Maybe they'll be placed around Earth in different places. But basically when people are in orbit, they'll be in these different instances. And then they can go down to Earth and come out to Earth, but they're never going to be able to see all the 1,000 people that are around them. And the people they see in orbit around Earth will be based on who their friends, who their enemies, who the persons of interest are, which is sort of that specific design. Now, in the case of a space station or something persistent like a Bengal carrier, there would not be a Bengal in every one of those 10 instances. There would only be one of those instances that would have the Bengal in, or one of those instances that would have a space station if it was a space station you could take over. And that, there would only ever be 100 people or something that could be on board it or attacking it or approaching it at the same time. And then there would just be a dynamic that would sort of manage whether you can enter that instance or not based on how many open slots there are. So I hope that answers the question there. Next question comes from Fogadus or Fogadus, I don't know the best way to say that, who asks, how will NPC ships deal with jump points? Will the AI fly the jump point like a player would, or will an NPC ship just auto-magically traverse the jump point with a small dice roll that results in a jump point accident? So generally, the AI, if you're not seeing them do stuff, a lot of the AI will sort of have its resolution happen at a higher level. So what we do is on the universe simulation, which runs on a separate service and server, it like simulates 20 million AI agents, but these AI agents aren't running around at the fidelity that we're running around in the actual game. So that's much more like, I don't know, think of it like a civilization game or something like that, where we have all these agents and they've got their turns, and okay, I'm trading, okay, I need a mission for 100 tons of goods to come to my factory. That goes out, some other AI agent takes it, okay, they go, okay, I'm going to fly from this planet A to planet B to deliver the goods. Along the way, there'll maybe some pirates in that area of space. They get close enough, the universe simulation would say, oh, you're close enough, they would have some simple combat resolution of what's happening there. Now, all of that, if you're not around to see it, that's what's happening in the background. It's being sort of simulated at a sort of very higher turn level basis. But what's happening as this is happening on the universe server is the universe server is taking sort of snapshots of all this action, basically procedurally building them into what we're calling sort of encounter templates. And based on that, as you're flying around, so if I was flying around in that particular case where there's a ship flying from planet A to planet B that's taking some goods and some pirates are attacking it, the universe server has said, well, okay, if you're in this area of space, there's a 60% chance that you will see a transport ship of this particular type taking this goods traveling from this point to this point. And there is a 40% chance that it will be attacked by a pirate of this armament and this type of ship. And then when you're flying around in that area of space, I get to that area of space when I get out of my, I'm plotting my quantum drive sort of path. It plots it, it's going to cross this encounter area, we're calling it sort of an encounter cube, because it's an encounter cube, and then the system goes, well, this is what the universe server is saying is happening at this very moment in this area of space. let's roll a dice. Oh, yeah, we just saw the, okay, we roll a dice, yep, you're going to see one of these transports. Oh, we roll a dice, you're going to see one of these pirates. And it's going to pull you out of quantum space, and that encounter will be happening right in front of you. And then as you fight with them, say you save the transport and you kill the pirate, that would go back up to the universe server, where the pirate would then, the game server side, which is the high fidelity simulation side that's happening on the Star Citizen, like what kind of the equivalent of what you're seeing in Arena Commander, would communicate back up through the various server levels, the solar system level, system server to the universe server, and it would go up the chain and it would say, hey, pirate was killed here. That pirate would be knocked off on the big 20 million AI simulation. And so next time, now when it sweep through the system again to sort of tell the solar system server and the basic game servers what the snapshot of what's happening in that area of space now there wouldn't be a pirate there because it got killed by you and it went back up to there, and so it says, nope, there's only a 60% chance you're going to see a transport ship going from here to here. So essentially what happens is the full sort of like long term of the big picture simulation of people going about their daily jobs and objectives and long-term objectives all happening on the universe simulation, and then you're sort of seeing a snapshot of it down on your side, which is sort of what we call the game server side, which is sort of the high fidelity simulation, and your actions go back up to the universe server and change things up there, and the universe server is always pushing stuff down, telling you on the game server and the solar system level what you will see at that one place or instance going around. It's kind of it's not 100% answering about the jump point thing, but I guess the point I'm making is that a lot of the actions that are happening sort of are simulated on a sort of, for AI, if you're not seeing them directly, then it would be sort of simulated on here's a chance of making the jump, here's a chance, and that won't be actually flying the jump unless you're actually there. So what happens is when things are spawned and it's happening, you will see them actually do the actions. If not, it's sort of resolved in a sort of a less granular way back on the universe server. But it's actually, the design that we're using is actually a really nice design because it's a kind of fuzzy logic between the universe and what the players see, because it doesn't have to be tied one-to-one, but players absolutely will have an effect of what's happening in the universe. And running around in space, when you're running around the system, getting encounters, it's going to dynamically be changing because the universe server is always pushing down data, basically dynamically building these sort of encounters for you based on what it's seeing in its snapshot of the universe and world. So it's actually a system that I think is going to work really, really well. It's something that Tony actually did a lot of work on coming up with some of the basic foundations of it, and I'm pretty excited because there's a lot of possibility for a really cool, living, breathing, dynamic universe, and we've got a lot of other stuff to talk about that we aren't necessarily sharing yet about the different levels of sort of the AI that will persist for you or persist globally, that there'll really be characters, there'll be personalities. I mean, we talked about it quite a way long ago in Death of a Spaceman, but it's the next level. I mean, I know a lot. Shadow of Mordor and the Nemesis system are getting a lot of talk, but the sort of stuff that we've got going for this is like a whole another level, and I think it's going to make a really immersive living world, and it's going to be very cool. All right, next question comes from the Hound. Will we be able to capture notorious NPC bounties planetside, or will we have to attack them in space? Well, okay, so this kind of talks into a little bit of what I was talking in that sort of the NPC levels. And no, you will not have to just capture them in space. There will be opportunities to capture them on Planetside, on space stations, in space. It will sort of all depend on the kind of encounter template that we set up and sort of where the AI exists and what we sort of let you do. I mean, so to be clear with everyone, because of the simulation of how we're going about the universe, it's 90% AI to about 10% players is sort of what we think would be a really good balance. So that'll allow the players to have impact in areas, but not completely destabilize the whole system. But that also means that in general, 90% of the people that you're going to encounter will be other NPCs. They will not necessarily always be other players. There'll be certain areas that we'll set up that will sort of attract players versus players and a lot more player stuff going on. But there's definitely, as you fly around, you'll be seeing loads of transport ships and pirates and whatever else, cruise liners, all that. That will just be a living, breathing universe with NPCs, and we're going to have that extended so it's not just about space. It's also, you'll sort of see the the results of people going about their daily lives or missions or trading down on the ground too. And so when it extends to sort of going after a sort of big boss NPC that you're got to go after for a bounty, there may be a multi-part mission where you chase him in space, then he lands down on the planet, you land down on a planet, you've got to chase him down to a certain area, and you have a gunfight with him down in a shady back alleyway. I mean, all those things will be possible, and they're part of the sort of dynamic mission system that we're building that allows us to sort of string different sort of encounter modules together and also stack them, so you can sort of have a simpler encounter module that has more like detail that comes on top depending on the situation, and then they will have the various missions or encounters have inputs and outputs, and so they can trigger another sort of encounter a mission that follows on after it. So it's going to allow for a sort of very sort of dynamic experience, and hopefully it won't feel like overly scripted. It will actually, because we're doing the idea is each one of these sort of modules are actually fairly basic, but the way they sort of dynamically add themselves or connect themselves together will make the game itself sort of feel like it's reacting to you, and what you do, the action changes out there in space or on the ground. Next question comes from Leo, who asks, we saw pictures of the Mobiglass placed on the left forearm. Will it be possible for me to choose the right forearm for my Mobiglass if I want? Well, that's a good question. I think that what we're probably going to do is, stick it, I would guess, mostly to the left. I mean, I know this is the case of, well, if I'm left-handed versus right-handed, so I would say if we support left-handed versus right-handed, then we would probably shift it over to the other arm, but right now we're not supporting that. Not saying that couldn't be something that would happen longer term, but it would be way too many animation sets and all the rest of the stuff to support now. So generally when you project it, we would like have it project in front of you so you can interact, but you should also remember that it's not always going to have to go that. Like you'll have a contact lens that has the augmented reality aspects of things, so you can sort of just see things, and then you basically are bringing it up to sort of do the equivalent of your web browsing or what you would be doing on your PDA. So this is really kind of the equivalent of bringing up my iPhone and doing this. Oh, I'll buy this thing now, I'll do that. But so imagine the Mobiglass being very much like kind of, you got an iPhone, but now you've also got like a Google Glass, or you've got like a eyepiece that will sort of do augmented reality around the world for you. But you bring up your iPhone to actually do the transactions, or say yes, I'll buy this, or no, I won't buy this, kind of thing. And that's going to kind of happen. But in our case, this will be sort of the Mobiglass, which will project up there. And maybe we even have a version of this that's not a holo projection. It's like a simple old school sort of tablet thing if you got a more primitive version. I don't know, but that would all be possible in kind of the sort of system that we're working on. Okay, last question of the 10 comes from Mandulis, who asks, back in the early days there was talk of multiple game packages being able to be turned into NPCs that you could use as crew. There was mention in the town hall that there will not be permanently hireable NPCs. Does this mean that things have changed, or am I still going to be able to have my NPC crew without having to pay their wages all the time? Multiple game packages are absolutely going to allow you to turn them into different characters. You can define your characters. If you're not playing your character and it's appropriate for that character to, say, for instance, be crew for you, and you've defined them, so like I'm a Star Wars fan and I've got my Han Solo character, Han Solo character and my Chewie character, right? And I've got my two characters defined, and they both live on Terra. And I decide, okay, I'm Logan now. I'm controlling Han Solo, and I get into my Millennium Falcon. I can have Chewbacca as my NPC co-pilot. Now I could log on the next time and be controlling Chewbacca and have Han Solo as my NPC. But in the case of whenever someone's playing, like you have some NPCs that are kind of playing roles on your ship, there'll be a running cost to that. It won't be like fully free, because it doesn't matter if you have all the crew of the Serenity, well, they all wanted their share of the spoils. So that would be the equivalent of sort of a running cost that you would have to have on your NPCs. We haven't specifically thought up the dynamics of how that would necessarily work. So maybe there would be something that we would change when it would be player-owned characters versus ones you would just hire out in the sort of the TDD area. But that's kind of the concept of the player-owned ones, is that you can like have 3 or 4 different characters that you've customized in different ways, and you can play any one of your characters you want, and the ones you aren't playing you could maybe have as crew on your ships. So I hope that answered. It wasn't a full answer on the wage issue, because general NPCs, you will pay the wage. Potential exception for a character that you own, although you'd have to sort of think the logic of it, because Chewie still likes to get his share of the spoils when they do a run. Okay, that's the last question in 10 for the Chairman. Thank you guys for listening. Hopefully some of my answers were informative and useful for you. Having a great time. We're working hard on the FPS module that will be coming out towards the end of next month, and we'll be showing at PAX East. We're also working on elements of the Planetside and social module, so everyone's got heads down, and we're doing some stuff on Arena Commander that I think everyone's going to be quite happy with, that will also be released next month. So it addresses some of the things that people would like addressed. And this is a big year, so we're ramping up to do all the performance and motion capture shooting for Squadron 42, which we will start doing towards the end of March, and then April and the beginning of May. And lots of work, lots of fun. It's great having all you guys support us, and we'll see you next week. Bye. Hey guys, thanks for watching 10 for the Chairman. If you guys would like to see more episodes, go here. If you guys would like to subscribe to our YouTube channel and always keep up to date with all our video content, go here. And if you guys would like to watch episodes of Around the Verse, go here please. And I will see you in the verse.